Paul Winder from MGI in the UK. I'm delighted to welcome back David Benaim with us again from Excel Consulting. I'm sure most of you will have joined us for some of our previous webinars with David and learnt a lot. So I know he likes the wow features when you see something you haven't come across before, but with no further ado on data visualization, which is all about how we communicate with each other and our clients. Over to you, David. Questions, pop them in the chat box as they come up. If they're pertinent at the time, I'll read them then. If not, we'll keep them for the end. So yes, thanks, David.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen? Working okay? Great, so let's get started then. The future is here. There is a lot of these kind of futuristic movies that had things that people can sort of touch and play around and move that around. And that is becoming closer and closer to a reality with the technology that exists today. So not quite as advanced, but this is actually a screenshot of something that you can do inside Excel. So you may not realize, but Excel has these ways to have clickable interactive charts that come off of data. So I'm going to show you this as an example. I'm going to show you lots of other things as well. My name is David Benaim, and I have a YouTube channel with the same name as me. I just hit 1,000 subscribers about 2 weeks ago. So my channel is on the up and up. I just started about 8 months ago, and yeah, it just keeps going and growing and growing. So feel free to subscribe if you want more content about the applications I'm going to show you. I've already got loads of videos and I keep publishing more and more every week. So I'm an accountant with the UK Accounting Institute, ICAW. I qualified with them around 10 years ago. I'm also an MVP, which is a Microsoft award that's given to the people who are the most influential in their software. So I won this award in March, and it essentially puts me in the top 100 Excellers in the world, something like that. I do a lot of corporate training. I've done training with almost 2,000 people, mostly in Cambodia, which is where I currently live, but also in UK, Singapore, Vietnam, Gibraltar, etc. And I have done consulting with my data visualization consulting firm for 120 organizations. So I run a consulting firm here in Cambodia, and probably the majority of the work we do is related to Power BI and data visualization. So this talk is a bit of a mix. So I am going to show you some tricks that everyday Microsoft Office users can use straight away. You can literally close Zoom after this meeting and then start using it. But I'm also going to show some expert tips, which are more around the software that could exist, predominantly Power BI. And within that are also some Excel tips for modern Excel. You're probably all familiar that I love using, showing you really cool new features. So today is no different than that. So 6 things we're going to cover today. First, an introduction to how what we see is very much outdated, pun intended. Then a demo of Power BI, showing how the data comes in, calculations and filters using the software, and then this is data visualization as well. Sorry about that, the wording change. Just change it in here. This is a really cool thing, part of PowerPoint. If I change it in here, so then my clickable sort of slide header has it changed automatically because they're all linked. But yeah, that's PowerPoint, which is not what we're on about today, unfortunately. So let's go. Let's go into outdated. There was a time when this is what technology did. The 50-page report. So when you work in accounting, in lots of other lines of business and office jobs, you always end up with having to produce a 50-page report or a very long report. And within that, you have very static data. Obviously, this is either printed or PDF'd, but it just doesn't seem relevant that the data is this way. I mean, for starters, why do we need to have something as a PDF if we don't print it? Paginated reports make absolutely no sense in a post-printing world. Oh, sorry, I've got to interrupt you because I've got 20 new likes on my cat video. So let me switch over to some social media. Here's my Twitter, just scrolling down. And I just want to show you a brief thing here to just give you just the drastic contrast between Twitter and between the way that we do work. So the way that we do Twitter is like we're looking for very, very short things that we want to scroll down as fast as possible. And this is in Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Our minds get bored so quickly in 2020. But unfortunately, these are the same minds that are also required to both write and to read these 50-page reports. Now, as much as we think that our brain works differently when we're in the office or when we're working 9 to 5, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So there's such a drastic change between the way that we choose our brain to think, which is within social media, and the way that we tend to distribute information at the workplace. So how we learn at 2020 is just very, very short 120 character tweets or just like 2-minute YouTube videos or memes on Instagram. And as soon as it's like more than like a minute and we're bored, we just click away and go to the next thing as fast as we possibly can. So talking about that in the data sense, let's say we want to do some analysis on voter turnout with a breakdown by age group. I'm sure we've all been there. And then suddenly your boss says to you, thank you very much for that, but I also want it broken down by gender. So I want the same chart, but one side for males and one side for females. So traditionally, people that don't really know the modern tools, they would go away and they would then create 2 different views, one for male and one for female like this, but they'd have to redo the data set each time. And with the challenge of redoing the data set each time comes a lot of other things, which inherently mean that your 50-page report that you started off with has now become a lot longer because you have all these sub-denominations. When things are static, you're just so limited in being able to do anything. And that's where applications like Power BI really take the next level. But the issue is not necessarily you. It might be that you are okay with having things interactive and visual, but your stakeholders say something different. A little flashback to the 90s for anyone who remembers the stakeholder Buffy. Okay, so let's go into a demo now. Make things interactive. Remember the first time you saw an iPhone? Now, I actually remember it specifically. I remember that I was at university, my housemate got an iPhone. And at the time, I was really happy with my Nokia N95, which was like, you know, it had a camera that wasn't awful. And it had like a way that I could, you know, see my messages. It had a color screen, some cool games. And then someone showed me the future. And in an instant, I was like, oh my God, this thing can seamlessly go on the website. It's touchscreen the way that we never had seen possible at the time. And it was just so far ahead from anything we'd seen before. Welcome to Power BI. So let me Alt-tab into the other thing that I've got here. So we're in a pandemic right now. And this is on my website. I have some COVID data. So any one of you can actually go into this website and do everything that I'm about to do. So if I maximize this, make it full screen, I can see that this is showing a very neat way of having the data of COVID-19. This is all scrollable by death rate, unfortunately, and the number of confirmed cases. But everything is completely filterable. So I might want to only see, for example, Europe. So I can tick on Europe and then all of the data filters to only show me Europe. So now these charts are filtered, these tables Obviously, this is Europe. That huge thing is Russia, and these charts as well. And you also have pop-ups. So I can pop up on any individual country and see a breakdown of what's happened there and their trend in terms of number of cases and everything else. Like I've done in my other webinars, if you find what you're seeing really cool, then type wow in the chat. Just tell me wow if you like what you're seeing. I got a few wows coming up there. So everything can interact with each other. Like these are very obvious filters, but let me select all again. You can filter by absolutely anything and everything. So I can click on France over here to filter. I can click on France and control click United Kingdom and Italy and see all of those next to each other. I could click out to sort of clear my filters, or I could even filter directly from the map as well. The visual itself can be a filter as well. You can control click and go to North America and do those three, and then other sort of random countries in here as well. And a lot of other sort of ways that you can see the data. You don't want to see this one, but you want to see linear, or you want to see logarithmic scale. You can swap that as well. And you have pop-ups up here as well. So how is this organized by country? I'm sure a lot of people have seen these sort of dashboards in the last few months, but I like to think this is maybe the most sophisticated one that I've ever seen. My coworker Joe built this. I can't take complete credit for it. You also have some other cool stuff. So I can go to the timeline one. And here I have a storytelling device through a play axis. So let's start off, so sort of towards the end of April. So at that time, we were seeing that sort of Italy and Spain were miles ahead of everyone else, but the next wave countries, Germany, France, and UK, were sort of catching up, and eventually France is taking the lead. Over here, horizontally, we've got a number of cases, and we've got dead going up. And then you see UK and France just going much in front, certainly in terms of the death count, but not quite the cases count yet. UK is now overtaking, and as time goes on, we see this story of how UK and Italy are just sort of carrying on, and now the UK has become the one that is unfortunately in front of everyone else, until Russia has formally gone in front with everything else and is moving faster than the other ones in terms of case counts, but not in terms of dead, because Russia actually counts the way they do deaths from COVID in a very different way to most other countries in the world. Germany has managed to stay stagnant, being near the others in terms of confirmation, but for some reason, much behind in terms of death. Cool. So if you like that, give me a wow in the chat. And if you want to play with it yourself, I'm just going to copy and paste the data in the meeting chat here. So there's a link to the file. As I said, any one of you from your device can go into it and play with it in exactly the same way as me. There's some other pages here, but I won't look at those right now. So let's go back to the presentation. So the coolest part, as much as that is pretty awesome, is not how the data gets output, but it's where does the data come from? And I'm sure a lot of you people have been asking that question. So you used to need a database to sort of have your data to give out these sort of reports, but now it can come from lots of different places, including broken Excel files, because you probably know as well as I do that a lot of data is in broken Excel files. And this could be when you're auditing a company and your client sends you data, and every client has the data in their own format, and it's a mixture of what's been done manually with what's been exported from a system, or it could be just combining data from multiple systems, or even from a single system itself. Then another thing that you often see is that data is in different sort of files. So people might have one file for January, one file for February, one Excel file by city, etc., etc. And I know that you're probably, a lot of you are using external systems, but I'm sorry to Salesforce and SAP and OneSource and QuickBooks and whatever system you use, because the most clicked button in any one of these systems is export to Excel. Well, not quite. It's actually number 3 after OK and cancel, but it's still the most clicked functional one. So yeah, let's go into where the data is coming from. So over here I have an Excel file, and what I'm about to show you is an application called Power Query. Power Query, I call it an application. It's actually a feature that sits within Excel, and it's the same feature that sits within Power BI. So because a lot of us are from the form coming from an Excel standpoint and not necessarily Power BI, I thought I would show that. So here's the analysis of the data that you submitted. So a lot of people are using Excel a lot. A couple of people are using it less. A lot of people came to my Excel talk as well, so I'll try to give you all new stuff. And in terms of ranking things in importance, first choice by quite a lot has been data cleanup. So that is where Power Query comes in. If you are the one that put this as your number 1, then you are in for a treat with this. Sharing your report with others, this is a second, and that is also something I'll show later. And then in terms of how people answer the questions, so most people have either never heard of Power BI or have heard of it and not used it. Whereas, yeah, people a couple of people are using Power BI a little bit. Power Query, we've got 3 using it regularly, we've got 4 have never heard of it, and we've got 3 that have used it, have heard of it, but never used it. By the way, this is Microsoft Forms. Highly recommend it. It's so easy to use, and it does all this analysis as you speak. Evidenced by the fact that I haven't been doing this because I've been presenting since the results came in. So back to this. So back to Excel. So here we have data that's showing based on different countries. We have different fruit types, sale dates, invoice number, who the person is, and a few other columns there. That's not where the data started off. The data started off in a folder. So just to show you a demo of this folder, I have my France data. And this is messy. This is really, really, really messy data. As you can see, I've got loads of merged cells, hidden columns, subtotals. Subtotals are always messy with input data because Excel tries to double count it. And we know that we need to exclude subtotals, but it becomes easy to make mistakes because it's tedious to forget that we may have done them. Or other simpler things like Excel does not know that both of these are related to apples. I know a lot of people are virtually nodding their heads. So being able to do this, we'd have to essentially copy and paste this into these cells. Well, it's merged, so that doesn't work. So we have to do a lot of adjustments to get this to be usable data. But it is the same data, and just to prove it, I have 36 and 6.5 for apples. And if I go back here, apples in France, I have 36 and 6.5. So those are the same numbers there. So the data is linked, and let me show you how to get from one to another. Let me exit out of this. I'm going to go to the Data tab in Excel. And if you're using Excel 2016 or more recent, then all of this up to here, this is all to do with Power Query. If you came to my Excel webinar, you saw me do these. These are pretty awesome, but all of this is to do with Power Query. Power Query is the biggest thing to have happened to Excel in 20 years. And just to showcase and prove that, if I launch the Power Query editor, I launch an entirely new window that's not even Excel anymore. I have 4 tabs, the Home, the Transform, the Add column, and the View tab. And all of these transformations are things that are totally different from the regular Excel. Now there is overlap. You have filters that you might recognize, or you have sorting options as well. But for the most part, these are all very, very different because it's all to do with data cleanup and sourcing data from different places. So to show you where it began, I go to the first one and I go to source. I can see that here I have my France data, my Austria data in this light bulb PNG file, which you'll probably know is the same as what I have in my folder. So I'm telling Excel, go into this folder and then do certain things to it. So obviously this very beautiful light bulb PNG file is not something that has data that I want combined into my data set. So I go through a few different steps to avoid that and to future-proof it. Things like I filter out and only do everything that starts with XLS. So I don't do this with the code. Instead, I just do it with a normal filter button and just do that. And then it just adds this extra step there. Then I sort of add a custom column, and this is to extract the data from it, remove other columns, and expand out to what I need. So it goes from the files into individual sheets. So in this case, I just have one individual sheet per item, but I might have multiple that I want to combine as well. Then I sort of filter out to only keep the data in that I want and expand again. And I go from sheets into files. So now I have my raw data type. So this is essentially the same as I showed you with the messy data, except it's sort of unmerged all the cells and instead it's giving me null values where the merged cells were. But I have still got my item name, my sale number, my sale date, certain fully empty columns, etc., sort of showcasing here. And then I do another few transformations to get to where I need to. So this is how we get from files, from folders into files. Excuse me. Well, let's go now go through the next stage, which is how to get from these files into something that's meaningful. So I'm going to reference this. And just that means that where the first one ends, the next one picks up. So this is the sources where that ends up. I'm going to show you how to do some of these transformations. So first, I'm going to sort of use my first row as headers. So I don't need that to be my first row. Then I'm going to choose my columns. So I'm going to click on the Home tab and go to Choose Columns. And I'm going to sort of just select a few ones. I'm going to go quickly and not give you the exact one. I just want to give you a showcase of how it could work and keep it easier to bear in mind. And then I can do other things that I can't do in the normal Excel, because I guess those things you could do manually. But with this one, I might say that I want to click here and transform and fill down. And this is near impossible to do with a regular Excel. And now it knows that these two rows are related to red apples. Next, I can sort of filter this and remove empty. So not quite the same as Excel, but similar. And also remove any subtotals. So again, I can just go here and remove empty because empty is a subtotal there. And then I can keep going. I have ways to split columns. I also have ways that I can add column and choose a column from examples if I want to be lazy. And I can say that this is apples. You can see there that it's pretty good at guessing that I want this to be called apples. And I'm going to call this fruit. So I know if you're an Excel guru, you can probably write the formulas that do this, but they can get really, really complicated, the formulas sometimes. The other thing to bear in mind is because we are grabbing from two different places, we have got the column names that repeat. So again, I'm going to just filter that and remove the word person because that's the one that's at the beginning of each column. So you create all these rules, and there's a lot more sophisticated ones than I've shown you. My favorite one is probably this thing called unpivot. So people who have used Power Query before, let me know if you agree with me that unpivot is fantastic. I really, really love it. But essentially, you go through all of these steps and eventually get up with something that is really, really useful and that you can use in your day-to-day work. Now, the cool thing about Power Query is you have these applied steps on the right. This is very different to how most Excel works, but you can go back in time through a time machine. So if you find that suddenly over here, what it was doing was it was Well, let me show you what this is doing. It's doing a split column, and it's splitting by a delimiter using this. So it's saying that every time where I'll show you how it looks here. My data is showing every time where I have a bracket, that means that it splits it to split from the code to the fruit name. So I've done that, and then I split by delimiter. But unfortunately, I had one exception. This is a dash instead of that one. But no matter, because Power Query is a time machine. So I can go back in time, and I can click on here, and then I can choose that I want to replace values. This works much the same as the regular Excel. I do want to insert a step in between. So I can swap that and change it with, just follow the same naming convention, which is space, bracket, and then there's a space, hyphen, space over here, just following the same as everything else. Press OK. And then if I go back to the present, remember the rules of Time Machine from your favorite Time Machine movies? Affecting a past has extraordinary consequences on the future. I go back into the future, and now my data is split up as it is. Then I can just sort of close and load my data, and that will give me the answer here. Now that's all very well and good, but the coolest part about Power Query is that what you're actually doing is creating the steps to later on be able to be reused. So I have a UK data file here. And well, let me show you the dashboard first. This is the front page. So this is being able to click on these, and I can create these items. They're in fact called slices and timelines, and they can filter these charts that are linked to the pivot tables. So I create pivot tables linked to that, and to create a slicer from a pivot table, go to Analyze, choose Insert Slicer, and then let's go with type and person, like this. And then I can just click on things, and it's just a filter, but it's a lot nicer and it's clickable, and people sort of like that. I can change the color to this if I want to as well. Or I can choose Insert Timeline, which came in 2013, whereas slicers were in 2010. And this does much the same thing, but it gives me a time-based filter. Interestingly, Power BI does not have these timelines in quite the same way, and I kind of miss them, but that's okay. Power BI relies a lot on slicers, though. So yeah, I'm not going to go through A to Z in how to build this, but I do have a video on my YouTube channel that I'll give you a link to right now if you want to learn from it. As I said, I have tons of videos on my YouTube channel. Yeah, I'm on 1.1K now. I just did one on Sway, which is an awesome app that I showcased last week. Literally everyone was talking to me about how cool this was. So please check out this video. It's so revolutionary when it comes to PDF files. And I love Power Query so much that I have an entire playlist devoted to Power Query. That's how much of an impact this has made on my career. It's that good. So yeah, I've got a lot of these. I've also got how to make a dashboard, how to get from folder to table, cleaning survey data, et cetera, because Power Query is a great tool. So let me just give you this YouTube link in the chat. If people want to check that out, chat there. So that's my YouTube. Please subscribe if you want more videos about what I'm doing or how to get a dashboard, things I don't have time to show, unfortunately, because I'm just racing through. So yeah, what did I want to show you? If I go here and I just drag the UK data into the folder and I click the data tab and I choose refresh all, then I have a sip of water. Notice it's got this line thing, and down here it'll say refreshing. There you go. It's brought in my UK data just like that, because the data is linked to this folder. If I move where the folder is, I can change the data source there. And if I go to how this is, you can see that the UK data rows have now been included as well. So if you like that, give me a wow. I love that feature about Power Query, getting data from a folder and refreshing it as needed. All right, so that's data coming in. And showing you a few demos there. So issue number one, your data is messy. As I showed you, when you have something like this, you want to sort of get rid of the filters, unmerge the cells and the subtotals, and then use the fill down command to sort of bring this down and fill until it gets to the next one. Something that's very difficult with the regular Excel. The next issue, your data is pivoted. This is the first thing that drew me into Power Query. When I was first reading about Power Query as an Excel enthusiast, I was like, why do I need that? I can write really, really long formulas to extract text from a formula and to split and to do other things and to change dates and things like that. I don't need to use Excel's Power Query built-in tool. But then I saw someone post about unpivot. And then I was like, right, I cannot do that in Excel, and I need to do this all the time. So unpivoting is the opposite of creating a pivot table, which is where you've got, for example, the country column and then January, February, March, or it could be, Germany, Austria, UK, or it could be whatever. The point is that the category is across the columns, whereas it's not very easy to actually analyze this and get a total sales by country. You would need to add together these rows that are not necessarily next to each other to get there. The process of unpivoting goes from something like that to something like this, where you have one column for country, one for month, and one for amount. So that is a very, very useful concept that I use all the time. When people have multi-row headers that you want to get into a very clean format that Excel likes, unpivoting is your friend. Again, I've got a video on how to do that on my YouTube. Issue number two, your data is split up. So this is sort of what I showed you. You have these different puzzle pieces in these different Excel files, but you want to somehow bring those together. And I'm sure you've been using copy and paste, not quite like these cute little babies, but you've been doing some form of copy and paste. But try doing that with 500 to 600 files per month, because the first ever Power BI project that I picked up, they had to do this and copy and paste 500 to 600 files per month in order to combine this together. So what Power Query can do, as I showed you, is it allows you to get data from a folder and then bring it into Excel or Power BI using this tool called Power Query. Now, the other thing that I want to show off is just this PowerPoint experience that most presenters have never thought possible and most audience members have never seen before. Do you see the smooth story-like visualization where I go frame by frame and have a story that continues from slide to slide? If you like this, write it in the chat, write a wow in the chat, because this is the future of presentations. I use this in my PowerPoint tool as well. All right, so your data is split up because that's only part of the problem. The other part is that you have these different puzzle pieces where you have stuff that comes from different folders or from individual files that you want to then bring together. So I use this analogy that I really like called the Power Tower. You might recognize this building. I use this as a good analogy because you've got 4 different stages to this. The first one, the bottom of it, is Power Query. So Power Query allows you to grab data from different places, even if those places are in different separate legs of the table, they're disconnected. It allows you to grab them and clean the data. Level 2 is Power Pivot. And Power Pivot is this engine that allows you to create joins between tables. So combining these legs that were separate into one united idea and then create calculations. And the top layer is building visuals. And this is sort of the top one as you go along. And what's interesting is that these steps are identical more or less in both Excel and Power BI. I already showed you Power Query within Excel. I'll show you that it's the same within Power BI, and then I'll show you Power Pivot as well. The difference comes on the higher layer where Power BI is a data visualization tool, and Excel, on the other hand, does things through pivot tables. But on the top, you have the transmission tower. And the transmission tower is able to get you to publish reports, either internally, it's confidential, or externally, kind of like the COVID data that I just showed you now. So let's look at the next stage. So filters and calculations. So how can we join together tables like this? And we can assess whether we're missing targets. So let's do that in a little bit. You used to need a database to join tables together until Power Pivot got invented. So the third issue that we have is no join exists between the data sets. So this is very, very prominent with things like budgets and actuals or targets, comparing that with raw data to see if you're actually against or away from target. So after the Power Query stage comes Power Pivot, which lets us create joins between the tables. So the tables can be linked to give you this output. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So Power BI, what is it? It's both a desktop app and an online service. The desktop app is available to download for free. Unfortunately, it doesn't support Mac yet, but for PC it does. And this is it. So it looks a lot like your Microsoft applications. If I go to transform data, I can see that this is loading all the same different things as you might expect in Excel. So like I showed you, the Home tab, transform, add columns, all of those are showing you there. And then we have this, which is the data modeling view. So this is an advanced example, but you have ways to create joins between the data sets with one-to-many relationships, a lot like you would in databases themselves. And then on top of that, well, these are just the tables, so you can just analyze and view your tables. This is not really anything you can do here. You can't change the data, much like Power Query. You just sort of see it there. But then here you have the top layer, which is the report, and this is where it gets different to Excel. It's a little bit like in Excel. In Excel, you have Power Pivot through both this one. This is a table relationships, and this is go to the Power Pivot window. So if I launch that, it's available from Excel 2013 if you have certain versions, 2019 for any version. So I can go to the diagram view, and I can see I have table relationships here. And just to prove it, the way that you would build it is, let's go for my sale date. I would just sort of drag and drop date into date for my calendar table, and then it would create this one-to-many relationship like that, which allows me to then do analysis with inside an existing pivot table. So again, this is kind of a whistle-stop tour. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but I have table relationships within Excel showing as a YouTube video. So once you've got that, you can sort of create visuals. I can say that I want to create a bar chart that is maybe looking at the deforestation data. I'll show you the source, but it's looking at that by province. It says Cambodian provinces, and then it just shows it like that, and I can sort of change that from that into a table if I like, or into a line chart or other kinds of charts as well through here. You even have different AI visuals, so 3 different AI visuals here. So I could say that I want to analyze it and use AI to give me insights there. And once I'm done, I can go to the Home tab and click Publish, and I can publish it. And once I publish it, it brings it to the Power BI service, which is sort of app.powerbi.com, or you can navigate to it through this as well. And then it will post it. Power BI private, this is for internal stuff. But from Power BI, you can sort of post that and publish it to the web. And then you get all these sort of things that you can do. This, for example, is a dashboard where this is actually real data. number of people who have died from taking selfies. This comes from Wikipedia. So here we have our breakdown by country. And again, I can hover over it to get this pop up in a really nice way. I can see over time and how they died, or I can filter it. So India is by far the most, and that is because, unfortunately, drowning is a very problematic thing. How many instances? So sometimes an instance can have multiple deaths. For example, multiple casualties. If I filter that, this one had 17 people, and here is the actual thing explaining how these people died. So I can also filter it by clicking on these flags and see the trend over time, etc., etc. Once again, if you want to play around with this data, it's just on my website. Every single one of you can access this just from a mobile phone or anything else. A few other wows there. People like the selfie data. Cool. So there's all sorts of things that you can grasp and get ideas with there. All right. So you do create things called measures within Power Pivot, within Power BI. And what it is you would get a measure to be a formula that aggregates data. So you could say, give me a % of females. And that you could write and you could apply it, % of females by region, by office, by month, by product, anything you can get it just by writing one measure. Whereas Excel, you would need to create multiple formulas, one for each of those. All right, so looking at modern visuals. It's taking a step back from Power BI and giving some things that people like to do. Ways to show data. All right, so over here we have pie problems. So often when I present this as a webinar, I say, well, what is the biggest slice of the pie? So the issue with that is a lot of people cannot really see whether it's pear or whether it's mango. What do people think? Yeah, sorry, that was something by Paul. So what is the biggest slice of the pie? That brings me to this controversial statement that most data visualization experts say, which is pie charts suck. If I show you the data like this, and this is the same data, isn't it always incredibly obvious? There is no doubt in your mind that mango is higher than pear. And that is because, well, a couple of reasons. Firstly, any 3D data distorts how your brain views it. Secondly, the human brain is a lot better at seeing straight lines than it is at seeing radial distances. So pie charts, don't try to use them with too many data sets. Next comes creating actual charts. So when you have a bar chart, then you have different ways to show it. So I always like to sort it from biggest to smallest and make it a better contrast and then make the bars thicker and have as little stuff as possible. We don't need, in this case, the numbers on the side. We don't need the grid lines. We don't need the legend. Often these don't add very much value and we can keep it cleaner and nicer without them. So I say if you are going to use pie charts, use something that I call a BI chart, B-I, which is something like this, where you just have yes and no, filled and not filled. This is very, very clear that mango is 63%. And so I put that in the middle as well, and it's very, very clear what's going on. Again, I have a video explaining how to do that. Let's show you a couple of things in Excel, though, before we wrap up. Cool. So here I am in Excel. And what I'm going to show you is different things that we can do with this data here. So I have 2011 to 2014. This is another newish feature. If I want to get a trend chart in there, I can click in this cell and I can go to Insert. And I can choose this section here, which is called Spark Lines. Choose Line, and my data range is over here. And then Press OK, and I get this little trend line in there. And now, because this is inside a cell and not a pop-out object like a regular chart, I can do this. Isn't that cool? I can just drag down a chart like that. I have a few different options within Sparkline tools. I can, for example, tick on markers. I can change a style or a color. And I can choose between the other two Sparklines, although generally I only ever use the line personally. There's lots of other ways you can visualize data. For example, you can select this and you can go to conditional formatting and color scales and just choose this one. So this will just very quickly give you a visual of what's really high and what's really low and what's kind of in the middle. Or you can click here and choose data bars. Another in-cell chart there, data bars. Those don't vary a lot. So let me do this one as well with data bars. This one over here, like that. Yeah, there we go. Now it's a lot more easier to see from top to bottom. And this one, I can choose the other rule, which is icon sets, like this, and choose a tick. You know, maybe my pass rate is sort of over 500 or something. I can very quickly and easily do that and show that there. So these are methods of in-cell charts that almost no Excel people use. If you like those, type wow in the wow button. You also have other kinds of charts, so new modern charts. So you can have data like this that you're able to say, well, what is my change from 2016 profit to 2017, including how much of that is attributed to extra sales from existing customers, how much is attributed to new products, how much is lost because of a factor like we had to close one of our branches. So what I can do is I can select this data and I can go to Insert, and I have here a waterfall chart. I love waterfall charts. Now you have another step to do, which is you want to set things as a total. So I can right click on this and choose set as total. Do the same for the starting point. And then it's sort of pretty clear, you know, this is my starting point. Everything that's blue acts as a way to increase that. Everything that's an orange acts as a way to go from one back to where it was to give me eventually this output here. Great, so that is a waterfall chart. I really like that. Statistical charts, I've recently gone quite into these as I do more and more data analytics, but I love a box and whisker chart. A box and whisker chart is able to just sort of give you the mean, the median, the interquartile range, the highs and the lows, and any outliers. Now, I'm not going to go through it because it's more of a stats thing than an Excel thing, but if you're looking at any kind of data spread, box and whiskers are fantastic. This, for example, can show me that although Cambodia seems to be higher, seems to be lower than Vietnam, it's more reliable because the range is a lot smaller. So if you want to know that you're hedging your bets and going for like sort of down here, but you lose the possibility of the upside, then Cambodia is an easier one to choose. You also have a Pareto chart that I really love and a less used histogram. Again, videos about that if you want them, but you essentially create your data like this. And a Pareto allows you to actually make a pivot chart without needing to create a pivot table in the middle. This one, it is here. And so it gives you sort of the percent of total over here, but it automatically adds together the totals there. I use those a lot, and they can work with slices just like pivot charts can. All right. Ooh, since I've got you on here, love this. Brand new feature just got pre-released last week. If anyone was on the call yet last week, you probably heard me say there's a really, really cool feature in Excel that's about to come out, but I can't say what it is. It's here. Let me show you because I'm really excited. Stock history. So it's a function. I can say that the stock is, it takes currencies like that, comma, start date. I'm just going to do 1st of January 2007. I've never tried whether it goes back this far. And then I'll leave the others blank. tells me busy. Oh, actually, it's maybe going to take a while. That means it's redeeming it. Let me give me another one. Oh, no, there you go. That didn't take too long at all, did it? It starts in 2012, learning something new for the first time. Interestingly, the 2nd of January and not the 1st of January. But you see that it's populated 2,200 rows in a second, right? If you like that, then type a wow in the thing. And then if you want to create a quick chart of it, of course, you can go to Insert and choose a line chart. There you go. So that's an instantaneous way to get that. This is currently in pre-release for Office 365 people only, but I really love it. It's coming to everyone else very, very soon. Great. So let me just sort of wrap this up, do a quick summary. Wow, I don't know why I found this GIF and I just find it so mesmerizing to watch every time the attention builds up. The amount of data in the world at any one stage is said to be doubling every single year. So if there was this much last year, then it goes to this, and next year it keeps doubling. And that means that data is becoming more and more important, and being able to get insights out of your data is more and more important as we go along. Every business is wasting time with paginated 50-page reports instead of interactive, clickable things that allow you to get insights into your data. So to show you a quick way of how to get insights, let me show you a final Power BI dashboard, which is again on my website, Play with Data. This is a survey that I helped an organization do. They have this, and like before, anything you click on is going to filter the chart. Anything at all. However, you can get insights into your data. So here they have how many people felt a part of the community, how many people tried new things, developed, felt inspired. But what is the message that this is going to give them? If I click on the people who said they've made over 10 new connections, you can see that instantly all of these factors go up. So what is the message that they're going to give to their customers? Make new connections, and then you'll feel a better part of the community and love everything else. So finally, my name is David Benaim again, and I have a YouTube channel with a lot of these. I am doing free consultations at the moment on anything to do with remote working technology, or I have lots of paid training courses that I'm doing online with Excel, Power BI. I'm doing that for organizations all over the world like MGI, who have been kind enough to get me to do all these webinars for them. Final points. You can get any data question answered at any time. And most importantly, as new data comes in, your question will stay answered. Like the COVID-19 data just refreshes every day with new results. But it all begins with a pivot table, which is done to summarize something that's really long like this into something smaller. If you're not already using pivot tables, highly advise learning how those work. Thank you very much. That's the end of my talk.
Thanks, David. We've had lots of wows, not so many questions today, but I think there was a good wow competition going on between Stuart and Gregor as the day unfolded. I do want to stress what David said about follow-ups in that there is an awful lot of information on his YouTube channel, so do use it. And also, a few attendees from previous webinars have emailed in and had dialogue with David on specific queries that he's very helpfully resolved for them, or highlighted that there isn't a solution, but it's created a useful discussion. So do engage if there's something you want to take further. Going forward, next week we've got some more time with Caseware. The relationship with that has really taken off positively, and a significant number of members have engaged with them to look at taking on Caseware. So next week's webinar is very much an introduction to Caseware. The one we did a couple of weeks ago was a bit more of a deep dive, but this is very much aimed at people who would be new to Caseware. So whilst that could be firm-wide, if you've got anyone in your team who will be using Caseware soon and it'll be new to them, you might find that's a good opportunity to give them a wider introduction. We'll be running those at a slightly different time, that it will be 3 p.m. BST on the Tuesday or 8 a.m. BST on the Wednesday morning. So we've got something for both hemispheres. The week after, at the very end of June, we're doing a webinar with Zero, very much looking at the digital practice journey and how firms who have engaged with cloud have really benefited in these last few months, and how sharing some best practice examples of what firms have done. So everyone can learn something, I'm sure. It'll be good to work from them. Moving forward, we'll then be in July. So we're looking at running a once a month webinar with David, probably on the second Tuesday of the month. We're just sort of working out the details on that. And that's going to be a monthly update with a bit of input on what's new in the sort of Microsoft suite in the past month. But then it'll be a deeper analysis of a feature or an app that's linked to one of the pieces of software. So Excel and PowerPoint have proven to be hugely popular when we look at the sort of attendee details. And so I'm sure there'll be more features in both of those that will be examined in a lot of detail. So we're looking to probably do it on the second Tuesday of each month, but I will update you shortly. And we're sort of just trying to plan those through to Christmas. And then also each month we'll be looking to put on a webinar of something technology related but different. So we're just engaging with a number of suppliers in different areas as to what else we might find useful to share information about. So there's lots going on, but if there's any things that you would particularly like us to delve into, to have presented, whether it's by David or someone else, get in touch. We're very pleased to listen to what it is you want, rather than assume we know best, because I certainly know I don't know best. So thanks again to David for making this work. Thanks for Maxine for setting it all up with us. And see you all again soon, I'm sure. Thanks and bye.
Bye, everyone.